For a few short, glorious days in July, there was a way to accurately estimate Steam player numbers. And since we've got the full list, the total players numbers for nearly every game played, we here at Extra Credits thought it would be fun to dig into that data and talk about some of the tidbits we found. This episode is brought to you by Compass News, a journalism app that makes it easy to be well informed about the world. Use the code EXTRACREDITS at the link below to get a 7-day free trial. The first and most important thing to know about all these numbers is that they're for the number of players who have played the game over its lifetime, which means older games have an advantage. Also, anyone who's thrown a free weekend has another big advantage since those players count. Lastly, the method for getting this data relied on Steam achievements, so any game without those, most notably Dota 2, we have no data for. So with all those caveats out of the way, let's dive in. First, the thing I know that most people will probably want to know, the top 11 list. Yes, that's right, 11, not 10, because I know how many anguished cries there would be if I didn't get to that number 11 spot. You'll see, just trust me. The list goes like this. 1. Team Fortress 2. 2. Counter-Strike Global Offensive. 3. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. 4. Unturned. 5. Left 4 Dead 2. 6. Payday 2. 7. Garry's Mod. 8. Warframe. 9. Counter-Strike Source. 10. Paladins. And the coveted number 11 spot, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So what does this list tell us? Well, a couple of things right off the bat. First off, that Steam really does love multiplayer shooters. I mean, 9 out of the top 10 fall into that category. Second, that free-to-play really isn't dominant on Steam. Only 3 of the top 10 are free-to-play. But eventually dropping your game under $20 helps a ton if you're trying to crack this top 10 list. DLC and microtransactions don't seem to be too much of a deterrent though. Also, in what I'm sure will be a shock to everyone, Valve games do well on Valve's platform. Oh, and I knew Paladins was popular, but I had no idea it was that popular. Remember though, this is all about the number of players who have played a game. It says nothing about revenue. So Skyrim probably made more money than some of these games, even though they had a few million more players, and some of these games millions of people probably played for 5 minutes and then set it down. Still, it's eye-opening. But on to the interesting and weird facts. First off, we're going to talk James's favorite, Civilization. He loves the Civilization games, but everyone knows that they don't really get good until all of the expansions are out. And for Civ 6, people really seem to be taking that lesson to the bank. Civ 5 is the 14th most played game on Steam. Civ 6, the 90th, with about 9 million less players. Sure, Civ 5 has been around a lot longer, but almost nowhere else in this chart will you see a sequel get trounced that badly. Here's another one I enjoy. You thought Stardew Valley was popular. Well, do you know what has it beat by 1 million players? Euro Truck Simulator 2. Interestingly, hardcore Sims seem to have a fairly solid fanbase, with a surprising number of them clocking in between 750,000 and 1.5 million players. Now that's not top-end AAA numbers, but a lot of those games seem fairly cheap to make, and so probably provide solid returns for their small teams. Heck, even really specific, really tiny sims like Fernbus Simulator, basically an advert game for one particular line of German buses, clocks in at around 100,000 units. Either the Fernbus IP is worth a lot more than I thought, or there's a pretty big niche of people who just love driving weird vehicles in the most accurate way possible. And I don't know how exactly you reach those fans just beyond making some kind of complex sim, but they're out there and they seem hungry for content. Similarly, there seems to be concentric rings of survival fans. Wherever you see a survival game, you'll usually see 1 or 2 more within a slot or two. Ark and Rust are right next to each other. 7 Days to Die and Space Engineers are right next to each other. Subnautica and This War of Mine are only a stone's throw away. For a while in the game industry, the common perception was that survival games were like MMOs. People only really played one. But this sort of game grouping implies to me, though this is admittedly a wild assumption, that this isn't quite true. A large number of these players, at least, try a few different survival games, which means there's still a bit more room here for the next big thing, than in something like, say, MOBAs. Oh, and before anyone says that strategy is dead, Civilization V, Age of Empires 2, 2 Total Wars, and Crusader Kings 2 all have been played more by people on Steam than any of the Call of Duties, except Modern Warfare 2. Adventure games, on the other hand, don't seem to fare as well. Life is Strange is the only adventure game to even crack the top 100. Even Telltale games seem to have been slipping, with everything outside of The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us below 1 million players. And their later entries like Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy not even cracking 100,000 players on Steam. CRPGs seem to have a cap around 1.5 million players, with Divinity, Divinity 2, and Pillars of Eternity all somewhere in that range. That's a little sad for those of us who love such things. But the good news for CRPG devs is that if you do manage to put out a high production value, well-reviewed CRPG, it looks like most of that audience will buy it. Anything below an 85 on Metacritic though, and it looks like the numbers drop a lot. Action RPGs fare better though, with things like Path of Exile around 7 million players and Torchlight 2 closing in around 5 million, even without being free to play. A good walking simulator can clear a few 100,000 copies, but not much more. So if that's your indie dream, just know what your cap is, at least for PC. Firewatch was the most successful I could find, with nearly 1 million players. Gone Home had 500,000, and Edith Finch was at about 180,000. After that, the numbers get pretty low. Okay, let's finish this off with a few silly ones for you. Less people have played Undertale on Steam than Goat Simulator, but more people have played CSGO than live in Spain. Roughly the same amount of people have tried Wallpaper Engine, which yes, apparently has achievements, as have ever played any of the Resident Evils on Steam. And more people have played No Man's Sky on Steam than Nier Automata. And last but not least, if you earned $1 for every game with achievements that someone had played on Steam, you'd be a billionaire. So, minus 30% for Valve's cut, and checking my math here, nope, still not enough to make Half-Life 3. Zing! You knew a Half-Life 3 joke was coming. Once again, thank you to Compass News for sponsoring this episode. Their awesome journalism app makes it easy to be well informed about the world, no matter how busy you are or how much money you have. You get articles from sites like the New York Times, The Economist, the Financial Times, and many more, all summarized without the ads and without the expensive paywalls. So if that sounds up your alley, use the code EXTRACREDITS at the link below to get a 7-day free trial.